this video lesson, we'll focus on specific functions which will read and write data from files and into files using functions in RStudio. These are the functions that we'll use. We'll use the read.csv functions to read data from a CSV file, the comma separated value file, similar to the Excel file. The only condition is that the file that we are reading from must be present in the same folder in which the R markdown file is saved. We can also write into a CSV file. That's the second function. It takes its syntax in the following form. Write.csv is the command. It takes two inputs, one which is the data frame from which we can load data, and the second is the file into which we wish to write. I name the file as name.csv. You can name the file according to your choice. Now this data frame, there are many inbuilt data frames available in the RStudio, like iris or my cars or employee data. We can call these data frames using the data function, which will take its argument in the form of the name of the data frame. And the function str of data frame will actually print the details of the corresponding data. And the summary of the data frame will print details about the data frame, namely the average, the mode, the frequency, etc. Moving on, you can also print or display a specific subset of the data frame by using the subset function, which will take as argument the name of the data frame and the condition which has to be met. And you can bind new data into the existing data using the rbind function, which is at the bottom, this function here. This is the subset function. And you can also save contents of a data frame as an RDS file. An RDS file is something which occupies less space due to its capability to compress data by using the save RDS function. And once you have saved data frame as an RDS, you can assign it to an object and you can use it to print the object. We're going to look at examples for all this. So other than this, there are a few other functions which I'd like to explain. The first thing that comes up is the write XLSX function, which will take as input a data frame and the name of the XLSX file that you wish to create. But this comes with the condition that the write Excel package must have already been installed in the RStudio. If not, we can use it using the install option. We have discussed this in a previous video. I'll explain it once again today. And then you can merge data from two data frames if they have a common column head by the merge function. So these are quite commonly used functions involved with writing and reading data into a data frame and from a data frame. We'll look at specific examples now. And before we go, I think I missed this function. There is this function which will read data stored in the form of a CSV file in a URL. Suppose there is a website which stores data in the form of a CSV file. Then the read.csv function can also take as input the URL, the address of the web page, and it can read data from the web page. Suppose that the data is saved in the form of a CSV file. Once you can read it, you can also write it into an Excel file of our choice. We'll look at examples of all of them in the video. All right. The first example that I picked up is to read data from a data file. I've saved a file called products.csv in the same folder in which I've saved this RMD file, the markdown file that's highlighted as products.csv. Now we'll try and read the data which is already printed here. And also we will try and display the first 10 rows of the data file using the read.csv command. So I'm executing this chunk here. We'll get the desired output in a while. So this is the data in the data file. It has a product ID, it has a product name. There are other columns also, a supplier ID, a category ID, the quantity per unit, the unit price, the units in stock, the units on order, and the reorder level. All these can be displayed in the RStudio window by using the read.csv command. This is the first example. All right. The second one, I'll try and use a data frame called as employee data, and I'll write that into a data file. Now, the employee data will contain information such as the ID, the name, and the salary. I'm writing this into a data frame using the data.frame function, and I'm writing that data into the file called as employee underscore data.csv. So the first command defines the data frame. The second command is going to write the defined data into a .csv file. So executing this chunk, we'll see that the output that we get is that the file has been written successfully. So if we go to the folder in which the markdown file is saved, we'll see that there is a file called employee.data.csv. That's down here. And you'll see that we have these four data types. The column 1 is ID, column 2 is name, column 3 is salary. The value that we have entered, the values that we have entered have been saved into this .csv file. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, the next is the inbuilt data called as iris. Like I told you, RStudio supports previously saved data in the form of databases. One such database is called the iris database, which contains information about types of flowers, length of their petals, etc. So we call the database using the data function. We'll try and display it using the str function. So I'm going to run this command, and that is displaying the data available in this database. So there is length, width of the petals and the sepals of of many flower types here. Those data are getting displayed. There are other databases like my cars, empty cars, etc. We'll use that in the next example. So once again, use the data function to call the database on cars, and I'll use the summary function to retrieve information about the data stored in this particular database, and all the important details like minimum, maximum, mean, median, third quartile, etc. of the various columns of data are getting displayed. So an inbuilt database can be called, and we can display its summary. The next program that we'll look at is how to filter the data given in the database using the subset function. If the data is available as an Excel sheet, this can also be done using the filter option, but we'll try and do it more efficiently using the RStudio function, namely the subset. For this, I'm first considering the subset called empty cars, the database on cars, and then using the subset function. Subset function takes two arguments, the name of the database and the condition. The condition that is specified here is that the value of MPG must be greater than 20. So this function here, subset of empty cars, such that MPG is greater than 20, will filter the data and will print the data. The actual database is available here, which I've already printed to an Excel file. It is this column that we're going to focus on. This database will have 33 rows, out of which a few rows have the value of MPG less than 20. So to demonstrate this, I'm first checking and displaying the cells which are having MPG value greater than 20. So we see that these 14 cells have MPG value greater than 20. But this can be done using an Excel sheet. But I'm going to do that without the Excel sheet using the RStudio function. For this, I'll use the subset function. I have called the database empty cars. I've specified the condition. I'm going to print the database. Let's see what happens now. When I run this chunk, the output gets displayed. We see that all values of the database have MPG value greater than 20. There are 14 rows exactly in this output. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 here in the first screen, and in the next screen we have 4 values. So this is how the subset function works. Now if we go back to the folder and open the cars file, we will see that the same has happened in the cars file. The printed data will have only the values which are greater than 20. So this is how the subset function works in RStudio. The next function that I would like to discuss is the write Excel function. But like I told you, the write Excel package has to be installed first. So we'll first try and install the write Excel package. Write Excel. Yes, trying to install it. This gets installed in a moment. We'll get back to that. Okay. Okay. So now that we have installed the write Excel package, we can use the write Excel package to call the function, namely write Excel, and print data into a file called file1.xls. So I'm retrieving the data that I already stored in the database, which is named as employee underscore data, and I use the function given in line number 47. Line number 47 uses the write underscore xlsx function, and it will retrieve data from the database called as employee underscore data and write all the information into the file called file1.xlsx. Running this command will print the data into the Excel file, and we can check it ourselves if we use the file1.xls file. So this has been printed into the file of our choice, which means the function has worked correctly. In the next example, I want to show you how data from a URL, which is saved in the form of a CSV file, can be printed into a CSV file of our choice. So for this, I've given two examples. One in which I've collected data based on the COVID-19 pandemic. It's available in the GitHub user content website. I've specifically picked up problems, data based on the COVID infection. So this command in line number 58 assigns all the content into the object URL, and then I read that using the read.csv command, and then I write all the data using the write.csv command. The second example is that I've accessed another database which contains the population of the countries in the world, and I've assigned all of this to the object called URL1, and then I've read those data using the read.csv command, and then I've written the content into the file called worldpopulation.csv. I'm going to run this chunk, and then let's check how far the command works out. Okay, I've also given the command to display the first 50 rows, so they're getting displayed. We'll find out how those writing the commands has helped us. File 1 was covid19.csv. I've executed this command just a couple of seconds back. And opening this will give us information about the level of infection due to the pandemic across the countries of the world, like Asia. First you have the continents, and then you have the specific countries across. This data has been updated last in August 2024, and all the data which was available in the website are now available in the hard disk due to the read.url command. The second example that I picked up is the one on the world population called as the worldpop.csv. We can also check that. So this once again gives us the population according to the country name and the year. We start with a country called Aruba, and we can find out what happens when we find out the cell which has the data for our country. So all this population details right from 1960 to 2023 is available, and we have written all the data in the Excel file of our choice. Okay. And you can also display the first 50 rows by this thing. All right. Now then, in the next example, we'll find out how to add a few rows to the existing database. So we already typed a database which is called as employee data. I'm trying to add two more rows to the data, namely Eve and Mark and their salaries as row number 5 and row number 6. And once we have done this, we can use the rbind function to include this data to the existing data. So we call the existing data by the object's name, which is employee underscore data, and we bind it together with the new data, which is on two employees, namely Eve and Mark. So once I've used the rbind function, it appends the two new rows to the existing four rows. And if I run the chunk, I'll see that now there are 6 rows in the database. The first 4 rows were already there. Now I've added 2 more rows on even mark. All right. The last two functions are pretty simple. I've tried to save the employee data as an RDS file. So the data that which we created in the form of employee underscore data can be saved as an RDS file using the save RDS function. And I can assign it to an object, and I can print the object using the read RDS function. So if I run this chunk, I'll see that it has been saved as an RDS file, and the saved RDS file has been displayed here. And this RDS file is also available. It is saved in the same folder in which the markdown file is already saved. The last one is to combine two data frames based on one particular column head. So I have two data frames in which there is John, Alice, and Bob, and there is the other database which has department HR, IT, and finance. So if I merge these two data frames, this is the output that I get. So I have 3 columns available, namely ID, name, and department. So I hope you enjoyed this video lesson on how to use various functions in RStudio to read and write data into CSV files and XLX files.